Okay, welcome back. This is a follow-up to my last grading video tutorial that discussed pressing, and there was a few viewers that asked if there's a way to tell if a book was pressed or not, and the answer is it's not easy to tell if a book has been pressed or not. And let me illustrate why that is and trying to dispel some of the myths that I heard over the years with regard to detecting a book that has been pressed. First is our flight number one. I bought this book off the rack, and let me show you the spine. You see this? This is a plump spine. Some people would refer to this as a plump spine. As you can see, it's quite round. Okay, years ago, when a book newly issued and first arrive at your local comic book store, this is what a spine would look like. It's not uncommon to see a spine like this, okay? And one of the myths that I heard so many times over the years is if a book that does not exhibit this kind of plumpness at the spine, then it has been pressed. Wrong. It all depends on how you store your books. I can tell you, here's another example. Here's a Teen Titan. Look at that. See? Once again, you have a fairly round spine that shows some plumpness to it. If you I store these books in a box that was not really tightly packed together, okay? Some of my books were packed quite tight in a box, and here's my issue of X-Men 268, okay? And there's no reason for this book to be pressed, or nor was it pressed ever, but look at the spine. Look at the, here you go. You see that? There's no plumpness to the spine. Here is another one. As you can see, there's no plumpness to it, and neither book was ever pressed. There's no reason to press them, but because they were packed in a long box for decades, really tightly, that eventually the plumpness at the spine is gone. So, you know, by examining just the spine like this, there's no way to tell or determine that a book has been pressed or not. Plus, you have to understand, if a book has a slight bend or something on the corner, professional presser can spot press the book without ever press the spine. So it's really there's no way to examine a book and determine if it has been pressed or not by looking at the spine. Okay, so that's one. The other thing, common myth that I heard is, for example, let's look at the Overhang. Okay, let's take a look at this book. You see the overhang here? There's a lot of imperfection, bend, dent on top of the edge of the books like this. And another myth that I occasionally heard is if a book exhibit perfect straight edges on a top edge like this, then it must have been pressed. This is not perfect, but if you see a book that have overhang, then it must have been pressed, which is also another false. Picture this, okay? When books were produced in the 60s or 70s or whenever, and they have an overhang, is that book, imagine this is the outside cover and this is the interior of the book, okay? So as they were produced, and as you know, paper is paper. The physics of paper, a piece of paper will not bend on its own unless there's some kind of physical force impacting the edge. So when a book will produce, guess what? It's gonna stay this way. There's no way the corner is gonna be bent or the edge will curl in or curl out unless there is impact. So you know, over the years, especially Silver Age books, you see this very common, especially in the 60s and 70s, before boards and bags were commonly used. Imagine a book with an overhang like this that sit in a long box or short box, and over the years, people run their hands over the box, over the books, dive their hands in. Guess what? That's what happened. As you reach inside the box, that can happen. Okay, so damages on the overhang that causes them to curl in, curl out, or rip or tear is all caused by impact of human handling. Okay, it has nothing to do with time as far as degradation of the paper over time. There's no such thing. Okay, so if you look at a book, for example, this book, the Silver Age book, you see the overhang. Look at the overhang of this book. It is perfectly straight edge. Okay, the myth would say that this book has been pressed. I can tell you, I have not pressed this book unless it was pressed prior to my owning this book. There is no certainty that I can say that this book has been pressed or not. It's not pressed under my possession, but other than that, there's no way to tell. Just because a book have a razor sharp edge and corner, like this one, even with the overhang, thankfully, whoever owned this book before handled it with care to the point where there was no impact on the top edge of the books that caused the overhang to have damages. Okay, and last but not least is because the majority of the flaws these days can be spot pressed if needed, it's really difficult to detect if a book has been pressed or not, sadly. I know there's a lot of people out there that is anti-pressing. They don't want to buy books that have been pressed, and sadly, there's no way to tell. For example, let's use this example. Let's take a look, use this as a cover example. If you have a hard bend, okay, let's say the book has been damaged like that, it would be extremely hard for this bend to go away completely, especially when it's a hard bend. By hard bend, hard crease, I mean when the crease broke the paper fiber. Okay, when you broke the paper fiber like this, can you see it? It is extremely hard to return this piece of paper back to the original state without pressing. Sure, maybe if you can store it in a tight box for 30 years, it might go completely away. But for me, whenever I see a book that have a crease, regardless of how big or small, a hard crease that lay completely flat, then to me the likelihood that that book has been pressed is above maybe more likely. But like I said, there is no guarantee, no certainty in determining if a book has been pressed. And I'm going to give you an example of a book that exhibit a hard crease that lays so flat that I am pretty certain, but not 100% certain, that it has been pressed prior to my possession. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at this book. I bought this book long ago on eBay, advertised as near mint. Okay, and sadly, if I know more about grading back then, I would never kept this book and I would have returned it. But let's take a look from the frontal view of the cover, the back cover. There's no way to tell. There's a picture on eBay misled me. You can see. Can you see anything? Give you even a closer look. There you go. Can you see it? Barely a hint right there. Barely. Okay. Trust me, on the picture on eBay, there's no way to see anything, but here in high definition close up, you can barely see a line right there. Okay. Let me show you how bad that line is. You see that? Look at that crease. It's a deep fiber broken kind of crease. Deep, that go all the way across the book. All the way. Okay, look at that. So you have a crease that go from here all the way across here, but it is so well hidden, and the paper, as you can see, is completely flat in that area. Okay, so in my opinion, whenever I see a crease like this, I would say that the odds is high that this back cover has been pressed, because it's hard for me to believe that a crease that deep can blend in so well with the rest of the cover that it exhibits no bend, no indent whatsoever. Unless you hold this book up into the light, you cannot see it. So for me, that's how I examine a book, and can tell, I can guess with some kind of high probability that a book has been pressed, and that's about as good of an example I can give you as far as whether this book has been pressed or not. Okay, hopefully that helped. Thanks for watching.